Hey everybody, good afternoon. Happy Wednesday. It's a nice week out, short of the weather. We have some storms rolling through where I'm at, so fingers crossed that our internet doesn't go out here. And a couple quick housekeeping announcements before we get started with our presentation. First and foremost, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to hang out with us and learn more about Microsoft Teams. SWICKtech was an early adopter of Microsoft Teams. We were one of the first 100 companies to beta test it a couple of years ago. And today we're going to go into a little bit more detail in how to do some things. And so before we get totally started here, I'm going to roll through a couple of slides before we get into our demonstration. So a little bit about SWICKtech and who we are. We are traditionally a managed service provider and IT consultant with a hyper focus on cybersecurity. As of lately, it's kind of baked into our DNA and how we do things. So for those in the room that do know who we are, thanks for supporting us and hanging out here. And for those that are new to SWICKtech, very nice to meet you all. I wish we could do this in person so I could see your faces and know that my jokes have landed. But SWICKtech has about 30 employees. We miss being together in this fun type photo. We're a good group of people there, and about half of us are technical and the other half are administrative. We do have a help desk that's staffed Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturday and Sunday, 8 to noon. So we're here to help a lot of the businesses in the area. And then we're partnering today with Excel and Flourish. We'll get into some detail, but Excel and Flourish, they offer a lot of classes and training, and they're laser focused on the most relevant and up-to-date information available. Really strong proponent of Microsoft. You'll learn that Jennifer Buchholz knows her stuff, and I'm probably not doing this any justice at all. But co-presenting, so it's myself, Eric Clark. I'm a Client Success Associate at SWICKtech, along with Shane Croning, who's on the call with me. And Shane, I probably said your last name wrong again. So we'll be moderating and asking questions. So this is a bit of a dynamic presentation. So if you do have questions along the way, please ask them. And if it makes sense, if we can fit them in, we'll ask during the presentation rather than waiting till the very end. So please, feel free to put your questions through. We have a moderator in the background, Ryan, who will push them through if they're relevant, and then I'll be the one to interrupt and ask them. So thank you very much for that. And before we get into demonstration, we did do a 101 back in April 2nd. Kind of at the cusp of COVID. And if you want to kind of go back at some point and watch it, it is on demand on our YouTube channel and our website. So you can find that there. I took some screenshots so everybody can see what that looks like and the agenda of what we had covered there. So it was really high level, showing off the different feature sets. For today's agenda, we're going to cover first some of the new features that have launched. And actually one of them I believe is already out of date. The background effects feature has changed ever so slightly. Now you can add a custom background officially. You could do it before, but you had to do like this really long kind of workaround, and now Teams has baked that right in, so you can just click add an image that you want for a custom background. So pretty neat update, nothing too earth-shattering, but additionally, Teams, since we had done the 101, has now launched 3x3 video meetings. So instead of just 4 faces, you can see, what is this, 9, right? Am I doing math right there? I hope so. So that's a new feature update. And then pop-out chat is one that I've really enjoyed. In Teams, because we're doing so much work inside of Teams as an application, you'll be working on something and someone will chat you, and then you'll go to that chat, and now you've just kind of had total squirrel syndrome and you've been taken out of what you were doing. So it can be a bit distracting having everything in one place. So having that pop-out feature has been really great. If that's something that like maybe you're not interested in, another workaround as a fun kind of tip is you can open up Teams in a web browser. So you can have it up there for whatever it is you're working on or your chat, and then have the app for the other thing. So a couple neat little ways to get a little bit more out of it as it gets louder, I suppose. You can also raise your hand now. A lot of people on these calls, as well as Zoom calls too, everyone kind of interrupts each other because no one knows who's going to talk when, because we don't have that in-person context, and sometimes there can be a lag. So now there's a feature where you can raise your hand, so someone can see that has been raised, and they'll say, oh, do you have a question, Shane? I see you raised your hand. So a really great feature that's been added, and these things are just being rolled out automatically, depending on what your setup looks like. Read receipts. This isn't Super new in my perspective. I think this has been around for a little bit now, but it might be new to you. I actually really like this feature. You can turn it on or off, but it's great to know that someone at least has acknowledged that they've seen what you've sent them. It's great. So if you want to know if someone actually has seen what you said, it's very self-explanatory, but you can choose to turn that on or off. And the people that keep it off, you get kind of annoyed with them. Like, no, turn it on. But they're the ones that are getting annoyed that, maybe they don't want to be bothered so much. So it just depends on your position and what you're doing. We won't cover every little bitty thing here, but here's a comprehensive, or a not completely comprehensive list, but a few other things that have been kind of lit up. You can now blur your background if you're on a smartphone, specifically iOS, so an Apple product. Live captions on mobile, so you can see what people are saying, which is great. I've seen that rolled out on Facebook for some things too. Live event limit increases has gone all the way up to, Shane, please help me there. Is it like, there's a couple different breaks there depending on what you're doing.
Yeah, so for live event increases officially through July 1, I'm not sure if Microsoft will extend it past then, but they've said you can do 20,000 attendees for a live event. You can have 50 live events scheduled per individual Microsoft tenant. And then you can also have, they're announcing support for 100,000 event attendees if you sign up for their partnership. So if you have an live event that is that large, you can reach out to Microsoft and they'll increase your tenant size temporarily for you.
Cool. Thanks for calling it out. We won't have to go through every one of these.
It can also last for 16 hours now,
Wow.
Eric. So in case we want to do a 16-hour webinar next time, we've got the opportunity for that.
Taking some pages out of the streaming gamers playbook. So without further ado, hanging out here with us is Jennifer Buchholz, who we introduced earlier, the CEO of Excel and Flourish. And Jennifer, we're excited for you to take over. You have a lot of horsepower at your office there. I think 4 different computers to pull this off. So we'll let you get at it.
Thanks, you guys. It's such a pleasure to partner with SWICKtech, and this has been an ongoing partnership. The goal for today was to get a little bit of a deeper dive into the product. So again, as we get started, please feel free to post your questions in the Q&A area. While I might not be seeing them, the rest of the team who's on the call with me will, and they will promptly interrupt me as appropriate. Just to give you guys a sense of what my setup is going to look like, I have multiple monitors, and on each monitor, I'm actually using a fake account through Microsoft. I'm able to have access to the sample account that we're able to use for demo purposes. What you're going to experience when you see that is not quite exactly what you might be experiencing on your own desktop, right? Additionally, I know that we have a bunch of folks from the education space in here. While we are using the commercial tenant, so it's more the business side of things, so much of this translates. In fact, I'm actually an educator with the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh and have a Teams account through them. So while we have not gone into fully using Teams at Oshkosh for our classroom deployment, we're still sticking consistently with our use of Canvas, our learning management system. We're starting to see that emerge a bit more, and the rollout of this was happening right as everything was happening earlier this year. So just so you know, I am not going to dig in specifically into Teams for Education. If there are questions that you guys have on that, please feel free to put those in the Q&A so we can capture them, and there may be some additional follow-up that's possible after. But again, I just wanted to recognize, I know we have a large size group. The focus of our conversation, before I switch to my screen sharing, the focus of the conversation today is specifically meetings, calls, and chat. And since I'm on this demo type of situation, there are going to be a couple things where the functionality won't be full on, but there's enough that we're going to be able to demo for you to just give you a sense. The reason we start here is because many organizations that I've been working with start using Teams as they transition off Skype for Business. And traditionally, organizations were using Skype for Business for meetings, calls, and chat. So that's like phase 1. And then you'll see at the end, we'll preview how all those concepts that we've talked about today tie into the collaborative features built into the actual Teams part of the Teams platform. So It's time to get started. It's going to take me just one moment to get my screens all configured properly. So hang tight, and we're going to get going live with the demo. And I believe everything is up and running on screen, and I'm going to be looking in a few different directions as we go so I can make sure I'm monitoring everything as we need to. So let's just get started with a quick tour. I know that most people on the call have used Teams at least once, but if you haven't, or if you are maybe helping somebody gear up for it for the first time, every time that you're logging in, you might start to see some of these hot messages about what's coming up. And again, this is a demo account. So they're noticing, hey, you guys, read receipts are here. It gives you a little bit of information about what those read receipts are. You can hit got it, or you can go to settings. I'll show you settings in just a little bit. So we're going to turn that off for right now. Couple other key things to make sure that you're aware of is in that bottom left-hand corner. We strongly encourage you to download the mobile application for Teams. Okay, it gives you a great opportunity to jump into a meeting when you're on the go if needed. You do calls and stuff right through Teams, or do your chat and messaging right through on your phone. So the mobile application, you can click here and you'll get that information sent right to you, your mobile device. Additionally, the other thing that I like to make sure that you're aware of is in the bottom left-hand corner is the help area. And one of the things, and actually I'm going to have these guys drop out as a notification, or make sure that everybody's aware of Microsoft's user voice for Teams, which means it's their way of sourcing the voice of the customer, is amazing right now because they've amped up the use of this product so much. I think actual adoption of Microsoft Teams, it's been out for a couple of years. I believe in the last 3 months it's actually doubled. When I started working on some projects early in 2020, they said they had 20 million people who had adopted Microsoft Teams, and I believe we've hit 40 million at this point. So it's a big change, and with that change, you might find some things that aren't working quite how you think they should intuitively. That's where we have a couple options: suggest a feature, give feedback, and the user voice. And what happens with user voice is when you go to it, you'll see suggestions that are out there, and you can actually vote on which ones should get faster attention, because there's a lot of development happening in this right now. In fact, Microsoft's vision, guys, are you aware of this one? Microsoft's vision for Teams is that people will stop spending so much darn time in email, and they're going to start spending 80% of their time in Teams. Have you guys heard that?
Yep.
What do you think of it? What do you think of spending less time in email?
Yes,
yeah,
please.
it seems like internally more time in Teams and externally for clients through email, right? But at some point, Pandora's box will likely get opened to expose Teams outside of your organization too.
Exactly. Shane, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, same. I mean, and I think we already do that today. We use Teams for our file storage, for our meetings, for chat. We have obviously Teams built into it for just like general organization of our company. So I spend the majority of my time through Teams, or at least accessing files and stuff in Teams.
Yeah, and I think you guys are going to start to see that a lot more. So the idea is that if we can communicate quickly through Teams, it's going to reduce the number of emails we have to send internally. And different organizations are going to have different policies on how external can be brought into this. We aren't going to spend a lot of time on externals because the simulation won't be able to dig into that. And there's a lot of background settings put in about within your own organization's IT governance that may determine how the externals are allowed or not. So considering that we're doing this for a large group and don't know what your internal settings may be set at, we can't address all of the external conversations right now, but just giving you a heads up that there's a lot to this and it's only going to expand. So let's do a little bit more of our tour. Again, we're going up the side here. On this left-hand sidebar, we have our calls and we have our chat and we have our activity feed. This is your quick navigation. Up top, we're going to get into crafting quick messages, especially while you're in the middle of doing things, and some of the quick commands. But we're going to start with the magic of your settings. Your settings are what really drives how your attention is called to the thing in Teams. Because think about it. If every time you got a message in Teams, it sent you an email notification, would that accomplish the goal of reducing your amount of time in Outlook? Anybody want to guess the answer to that?
Yeah, probably not. Not one.
Right? But if you are still balancing between Outlook and Teams, and you're not always living in Teams, you don't want to miss things that are coming to you. So this is where these notifications are super important. And once you understand notifications, then chat becomes a very powerful tool. So up in your upper right-hand corner under your image, and in this case, I'm using the account of Megan Bowen. She is currently available, but you can see how you have some of these features, again, like you would have had in Skype for Business. You also can set a status message. So a status message is sort of like your version of out of the office. And you can also signal to someone that who they should contact. Put that right in there, and you can indicate how long you want that message to be on for. So I'm just going to turn that on for an hour and hit done. Now, every time somebody's going to interact with me in Teams, they will know that. Now we're all working from home, so that's no longer an excuse. But we're going to dig into settings. And here in settings, while there's some aesthetic settings and things like that, and I encourage you to explore, for the sake of our time today, I want us to get into notifications. And there's at least 14 different types of notifications that you have the ability to turn off and on or select how you want to be notified of certain things. This is where this stuff works together. Shortly, you're going to see how I @mention, which is called a personal mention, someone in a chat. And when you're in Teams, you can channel mention or team mention someone. The idea in that is that you are being specifically called to have your attention brought to that. And depending on how often you are in Teams, you get to choose how do you want to be notified. Do you want it in the banner where it's just going to pop up in the bottom right-hand corner? We'll give you an example of that in a moment. Do you want it in an email, or do you only want to see it in your feed? Now, these are the default settings. And again, I want to go back to that example I had because we do not want inbox overwhelm from this. If we keep this set to email, the trick, everybody, is that you want to go to your missed activity emails and see how frequently you want to be notified of missed activity. Once an hour is the default. What that means is there could have been a bunch of mentions, but it's not going to send them to you immediately. It's going to take it once an hour and say, hey, and call your attention to that. That feels a lot more reasonable. There's a lot of different options you have there. I wanted you to see the default settings and where you can change all of those. Hey guys, how often are you guys getting notifications? Or I know SWICKtech has been really living in Teams. Do you turn off some of those email notifications, or do they just not come through because you're in it so often? Shane, why don't you start with that?
I don't get any email notifications because I live in Teams, yeah, so they're all turned off. I think I went in and turned them off, so I'm not sure if our organization has that set or if it's because I'm in it all the time, but I know I went through it and turned them all off. I do get obviously the notifications from Teams itself when someone chats me or apps me in a channel, all of those sorts of stuff that pops up still. And I just set my account to do not disturb when I don't want that distracting me.
Perfect, and that's a great point. This setting, again, that setting up in the upper right-hand corner where you can change it to do not disturb is when you can get some private time or quiet time to get some stuff done, focus time. Brian, how about you?
Say, for example, I'm on Do Not Disturb right now, so I don't get anything popping up while I'm in this presentation. I had asked a question the other day to our team because I noticed some people, if you look at the available right there, if you hover over that, there's a few options like, you know, away, busy, do not disturb. But I noticed some people had purple and out of the office. And I was wondering, how did they do that? Where's that option? That's because it's synced with their Outlook calendar status. So that was a neat little gotcha.
Exactly. So that's the fun part, is that you don't have to do all that work yourself. Your calendar is baked right in. In fact, let's talk about that for just a second. The idea is that Teams is meant to be an interface. It's, by the way, I just sent my persona a message so you could see the banner pop up in the right-hand corner down here. So just in case you're wondering what just happened on the screen and why is Megan getting messages while we're doing this very important presentation, it's because I wanted you to get the live effect of that. So if we think about what some of the things that Teams is bringing together, it literally is syncing in your calendar right from Outlook. You don't have to do any separate work in there. We'll get into that in a second when we talk about scheduling meetings. It brings together all those features from Skype for Business, including the chat and the calls. But it also brings together things like OneDrive and SharePoint and file storage and collaboration. So while Teams is a wonderful standalone product, it was built on the backs of all these other products that have come together, and it's available to you. Now, we will want to talk about when is the right time to do a chat versus when is the right time to do a team. And perhaps, guys, you can make sure that we cover that when we're doing a little bit more of the group chat stuff and make sure that question comes up. Okay, so it's time to chat. And we're using chat as the basis to understand functionality that you're going to find both here in the chat, and it also similarly aligns to the posts section of the Teams. So by teaching it here, it actually applies in more than one place. So Patty just messaged and she did a quick, how are you? Now, this is a message that just came in moments ago, and let's look at all the things that come up, because I don't know if you've taken time to poke around to see what lands behind all of this. We're currently in the chat area. If I quickly wanted to reach out to Patty and not chat, what if I'm like, ooh, I forgot, I needed to send Patty an email. I can hover over Patty's icon here. I can also hover over it right here, and you see the pop-up that comes up that includes a few different things. This is again the chat. We can jump right to an email message. This is an indicator of where Patty is in the organization. And video calls aren't going to work in the demo, but I could do an audio call right here as well, all from that little icon, okay? And it works over here in the chat list as well. So take a moment and, like, again, explore. So I'm going to do a quick response back. Okay. Gotten a quick response back, and we're, going back and forth between a couple screens now. That is the indicator that it's been sent. And when I come over into the other screen where this is landing, we should also get an indicator that it's been read. And if you're not familiar with where to change that setting for read receipts, it's under here as well, under your settings. So, okay, we can all chat, we can send messages back and forth, but there's a whole bunch of other icons right under here that if I wanted to start just doing this one-on-one communication back and forth with Patty, and we didn't really need an email chain to follow, this is just some quick stuff. Here's what we've got. This first guy here is called the, go ahead, got a question?
See, here we go. I'm using my superpower of interruption.
Yes.
There was one question that came through just a minute ago, and there is a bit of a lag. So, I apologize if I didn't get to it just in time, but someone had asked, how about shared calendar? Can you interface Outlook with Teams in that side of things?
Okay, so here's what's currently going on. And again, this would be something to put some feedback in or get some user voice. Right now, There is just one calendar that you're going to get access to currently directly here in Teams. If there's stuff that you need to do with a shared calendar currently, you do need to jump back out to Outlook for that. Are we, unless you guys have heard anything different, because sometimes you guys get some tech updates before I do, but that's the latest that I've gotten on that one.
Yeah, I would agree. That's what we've seen as well. I think the calendar is kind of hopefully the next thing to get a little bit more overhaul in Teams land. So hopefully it'll get more integration with those shared calendars and stuff like that, but not yet.
Yep. And yeah, I think that's where we can go with that. It's a great question though. And those are the kinds of questions that we'd love to see, because if you guys are finding like that one thing that annoys the heck out of you, and like we used to do it like this in Skype, or it's not as smooth as an interface as what we've seen, there's been just some simple questions that I've been asked and I'm like, oh, but have you thought about doing it this way? And I'd love it if you guys walk out of this today like, oh my gosh, all I needed was that one trick, and now that's going to save me time or frustration. So that's my aim. Okay, I'm going to keep going. You guys keep interrupting as necessary. So we have the option to format messages. This is the plain text format. It's not very glamorous, but it's the quick and dirty way to do stuff. But if you wanted to, there's all sorts of, tools that you can use. So aside from your standard, bold and all that other fun stuff, you do have the ability to highlight in here. We have the ability to, make some changes to your font colors, font size. Additionally, apply paragraph styles. So if this is going to be a longer thing, there you go. You can use paragraph styles. You can clear formatting. We can do our indenting. One other thing that some people find interesting is this quote offset. So the quotation offset is this little guy right here. When you select it, it kind of offsets that information a little bit. So it adds a little bit more style, a little bit, zhazhazhoom to it. We have inserting links and even more. So again, this is not necessarily something that you're doing all the time right here in your one-on-one chats, but all of the features that you're seeing here also apply to some of the stuff that happens when you're chatting or using the posts feature of a team. Okay.
And if you find yourself doing a really long, format style chat, you might want to stop and ask yourself the question, should I send an email instead? But it depends, right?
I'm not going to even disagree with that. I'm going to say yes, or should it just be a quick call? Because sometimes if you're just typing in backstory after backstory after backstory, both of those options, should it be an email? And really, again, thinking about, is this something that's just going to be between me and Patty, or does it have to go elsewhere? Because we'll talk about adding somebody else to this chat in a moment. You can indicate importance in a message. So here we go. We have indicate importance. By default, everything is set as standard. Now, this is, you guys probably have had that one guy in the office at some point who marked every single email as important. And we all know if everything is important, nothing is important. I'm curious to hear if SWICKtech uses any of these. So one is to mark your message as important. And look, that comes through. It has a couple indicators and highlights, which is great. But did you see that urgent one, guys, at SWICKtech? Are you using urgent at all?
Eric uses important for everything he sends me. It's a little annoying. We do use the important one pretty appropriately when people are posting something in our team to let folks know about an urgent issue or something important going on. We use the important one a lot for that stuff, and
maybe or something like that.
But I wouldn't say people really use or maybe don't even know the urgent option exists.
Probably let's not tell them. Don't let them take this class. Because the urgent option is the recipient is notified every 2 minutes for 20 minutes. And while that might seem helpful on the sender's end, I'm not certain that that's really effective on the receiver's end. It might be, but those are some things that you guys might want to come up with some appropriate protocols for as well. By the way, this little guy right here, this is my red indicator. This is meaning that it has been seen. So I just wanted you to see the difference in the indicator on that. The check mark meant sent, and the little eyeball is meaning it's been seen. So additionally, some people wonder why the heck did Microsoft add all the emojis and the stickers and the GIFs? And I'm going to go into this other account and reply so you can see something fun flashing back at you. Because here's the thing, Microsoft is known that we're running into these issues of people working from home, right? And they're not in the office and they're feeling a little bit detached as part of the team, and they just want to be connected, right? So instead of, having this be really depersonalized, they've added these things like emojis and GIFs and things like that to just allow people to have a little bit of fun. So this is an example.
It helps capture a culture really well. It's we've heard a number of businesses say like, well, that's too, loosey-goosey, but this is why it has such a high rate of adoption. It's because it allows people to drive that culture. There are 2 questions that I wanted to pause and ask that just came through. So again, because of lag, it's only slightly behind, but someone had asked, is there another way to send an email on Teams instead of hovering on the name in the chat area? And I'm actually not sure of that.
No. I mean, not that you have to do it in the chat area. I could be in a team, and so it's not about hovering over the chat as much as it is hovering over the person's icon, wherever that person's icon may be. So you're going to see I hovered over it here, or here, or here. I went up top to the person. I went into one of the messages they posted. So if I were in a team, and I'll go in there real quick just so you can see. I don't think I have. I can click on that person and still be sending an email to that person there. So it's not as much associated with the chat as it is with the person's icon.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Next answer. And then the next one is, when it comes to Teams meetings, someone said they've been looking for a decent way to create a shared agenda. Do we have any suggestions for that? There might be a few ways to tackle that. So
yeah, let's hang
on
to
that
just a little bit till we get to meetings.
Right.
And then I think that's one that we can all pipe in on some different options that we'd like to share on that. But the answer is absolutely, and we'll have some recommendations and best practices for you.
And then,
all right.
Sorry, lastly,
go ahead.
Where exactly is the read receipt option under the settings?
You betcha. I feel very Wisconsin when I say you betcha. I apologize to anyone who is not Wisconsin based when I say things like that.
There is a brand now called You Betcha. He's partnered up with Charlie Barron's.
I was going to say that's exactly who I thought it would be. Okay, I clicked on my person. I go to settings. And I'm going to go to privacy and then read receipts. This is it. So under our settings, under privacy, we have read receipts, and it's let people know when you've seen their messages and know when they've seen yours. Okay.
Jennifer, I do want to note, I believe you can enforce that globally on a tenant too, so people should just keep that in mind. If an organization has decided, hey, yes, we want read receipts on, or no, we want them off, you might not see that setting.
Right. Great, that's an excellent point, Shane. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, anything else before we keep going?
Nope, nothing right now. Nothing right now.
The last fun one in here is going to be to grab a sticker. And the fun part about stickers, guys, is that they can be customized. I'm just going to put that, and you could actually say like, Ryan can fix it. Right, that's good. That's basically what I live with, is that whatever is going wrong on my computer right now, I'm going to let Ryan handle because he's my behind the scenes guy. Okay, so those are the fun things. We're going to come back to file attachments shortly. So the next thing right from here, folks, I could hit schedule a meeting. And look, it gives me my meeting invite. It adds to Patty. It just went away. One moment, please. Here we go. So right from here, we can get to our scheduling assistant. It does bring in the next upcoming meetings. This should look very familiar as if it would be done in Outlook. You can add other people, but that gets a little bit wonky when we're doing it in chat. So just a couple, you can do it right from here, but we're going to talk about adding others in just a moment. You can go right to Stream. Stream is, do you guys want to try and describe Stream? I'll do it, but I'd like to hear your version.
I can take a crack at it, and then we'll have a question to ask after that. Stream is kind of like a private YouTube channel that you get baked inside of your Office 365 tenant. So if you go to like your Office portal, you'll see Stream, and any videos that you record, like the one we're recording right now, this will be uploaded to SWICKtech's Stream. For those of you who don't know, Shane and I also do the SWICKtech podcast, and we just do that through Teams and record, and that goes into Stream. So we just download those videos and then edit them from there. So
that's the key part that you just added there, Eric, is that Stream is an internal tool. So like YouTube, you could go out and grab a link and send it out. From Stream, if you wanted to share content outside of your organization, that's a download and then grab it and put it somewhere else to be shared, versus direct from Stream. Stream is an internal tool, but if you're doing anything with the video stuff, and all the meetings that you choose to record in Teams are automatically stored in this cloud storage space called Stream. Cool, we're good on that. What's the question?
So one that I had queued up and another one popped in after that. So everybody, thanks for the questions here. One had asked, how do we add a file to chat? I think we're going to cover that a little bit down the road, so we can couch that one for right now, but we will get to it. And the other one, can you get a list of call participants and the time they entered the call, left the call, etc., without taking screenshots? Looking for a feature that allows a more automated list of participants. And Ryan, you might have an answer for that one. I'm not sure.
Ryan, I would love for you to chime in on that list.
You can, for a live event, you can get an audience participation list. So I'll be able to see all of you folks that are here and when you enter the live event, but I don't know about anything outside of live events.
So yes, we might have to find an answer for that.
Well, and I know from an education standpoint, right? If I were giving a lecture and I were trying to take attendance, it would be super helpful to know who showed up to my lecture on time. It would be super helpful to know on some virtual meeting tools, it actually can give an indicator of, are they multitasking on their screen or are they watching on their screen? And it would be helpful to know if they've left the meetings and things like that. While that is possible for live events, and we're hearing more of some of that coming down the pike, I don't think that that's anywhere close to where we want to see that in the future with the Teams tool yet.
Okay, great. And then if you record a meeting, will everyone at the meeting be notified automatically that they're being recorded? The answer to that is yes, and you'll get a little indication across the top of your screen that it is being recorded.
Yep, the privacy things are properly set for legal purposes and notifications. There is, here's what I'm going to say on this. Within the platform, there is no way to record a meeting without those meeting participants knowing. I said the term within the platform because there's also a ton of other tools out there to record a screen that are outside the Teams platform. So Teams and Microsoft can't account for anything outside of their platform, of course, but within the platform, you would always be notified. Great. And so let's go ahead. We'll dig right into next the file attachment, because, okay, here's my story. I used to do some work in HR. And I used to have to write HR policies, which were super fun. I'm sure you can understand that. So I would go and work on my policy, and I'd go find all these research, and then I'd draft a policy, and I'd be saving that, typically in my OneDrive. But then to get feedback on it from the stakeholders that I need feedback from, let's just say I would email that file out to 5 different people. And then those 5 different people would open it and save it and make their comments or their edits or whatever that is. And then they'd save it and send it back to me. And it was my joy to bring together the feedback from 5 different people into one new combined file that has to be sent out again, because in a case like that, each person had their own copy. And what starts to happen with all of this stuff with the cloud behind it is that you guys should no longer be emailing file attachments. Instead, we're going to look at how you can use Teams, Chat, or OneDrive as a place for collaboration and what that story would look like if we were doing it this way. So I'm going to just jump in here real quick, because it doesn't matter whether my file originally started off in OneDrive or whether it started off in my computer. When I jump in, I'm just going to grab a quick example that I can use. Now, I'm happening in this particular instance, all I've done is I've done the file attachment part here, and I'm going to be sending, can you look at this? Now, what'll happen, and actually I'll be able to show it to you from Patty's perspective in just a moment. But you guys, this chat is between two people. It's between Megan and Patty. And now that file has become a shared file in OneDrive for those two to collaborate on. Like, that's the magic behind it, is that this file now lives in OneDrive. So remember, this is Megan, she's the owner. I'm now going to bring over, like magic, I'm going to bring over Patty's screen. Can you guys just give me a quick nod that you can see this other screen I just brought over? Great, I'm going to make it full size.
And then when you're done with this, we'll pause for a question or two.
Sounds great. Okay, so now under Files, I can go to click on it. And this is just taking a little bit of system resources, so just hang tight and be patient. We don't need to worry about that disclaimer right now. So now I just want to make a quick note in here, calling it a shared file. So you can see what that experience is like. I'm in editing mode. I'm just going to close it right here. And I'm going to move Patty off. I'm back in Megan's account. When I go into the press release, that is what's been added, is the shared file. Not, okay, so before we go to your question, Ryan, I just want to say, before it was, I've done the work, I save the file, I open an email, I attach the file, I send it, they get it, they download it, they do their work, they save it. Then they send it back to me, and then I have to open it again. Did you see how few clicks this took for us to get that back and forth that quickly? I wish, can we please like figure out a way to get like rounds of applause on that? Because I feel like this is my favorite trick.
So it's shutting down. Oh.
I do see that. That's fun.
This is a good time to answer some questions.
Yep, let's do it.
That. So one of the questions is unrelated to that, but the next one is, so we'll start there and work our way back to this. How do you delete a chat or a recording? Is that might be more of a loaded question, because that might kind of challenge the why, and if it's the company stuff, should we be deleting things, etc. I don't know, Shane, maybe you could tackle that one, putting you on the spot.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I guess there's two pieces to that question. So the how do you delete a chat? You can like delete an individual message that you've sent to someone, and they're no longer going to see it. Now, obviously, I would argue that's probably still stored on Microsoft's servers somewhere, so don't feel like that's gone forever. It can probably be dug up, but to do so, there's a little ellipses on every single chat message that you send in Teams, and you can just click that and there's a delete option. The person will see a notice that says like you deleted that message, so they'll know you sent something. They may have even seen it already or gotten a notification about it, so they might already know what you said, so just careful with that. And then as far as how you delete a recording, you shouldn't really have to. If you record something within Teams, it's going to go into your Microsoft Stream account. Only the people that were part of that recording are going to have access to those video files. Obviously, like administrators would too. But you could go into Stream if you want, and you can view all of your past recordings, and you can edit them and delete them and stuff like that.
You and I record our podcast. You and I can access that through our Stream individually, but like Ryan cannot, for example, or someone else at the organization cannot.
Correct. It is an internal tool, so you can share it with other people in the organization once it's in Stream, but by default, it shouldn't be shared across the organization.
Okay. And we'll throw next question to you too. And Jennifer, if you can answer, great, but we want to let you focus on getting your stuff back.
That's up. Okay. Let me go back to the deleted thing for just a moment. So this is really important from an e-discovery standpoint. And e-discovery means if something legal were to come up, it is never really deleted. You can put it, once you have hit, just like with an email, once you have hit send, it is captured somewhere in the system. There's just no way around it. So, and that's to cover your organization's butt, to cover everybody's butt. And so it's just really important to realize that hitting send, even if you go back and hit delete later, it's not done.
Yeah, that's super important to understand.
Okay, the other question, and a few more coming through, so we'll keep answering a couple here. If we need to continue on, we will, and then we can take some more breaks. We will have Q&A at the end also, everybody, just want to make that announcement. But someone had asked, we have our files on SharePoint. Can we integrate SharePoint with Teams rather than do it all through OneDrive? That's a great question. The answer there is yes, right? SharePoint is under the hood of Teams. Teams is just a GUI interface for that, so to speak. I'm trying to think of a better way to say that, but.
Yeah, I guess, Eric, if this person is using SharePoint, they're probably familiar with the sites nomenclature. So you may have SharePoint sites set up in your environment, and those are spaces where groups of people or departments can have a site within SharePoint to access files. Those SharePoint sites translate directly to Microsoft Teams. So, and we can show you this when we get back up and running here, but a team in Microsoft Teams is going to have a files link automatically connected to it, and all those files are going to be hosted and stored in SharePoint as a site. So they are one and the same. I know that's a little confusing, and I just said Teams like 72 times and SharePoint and sites, and it all kind of blends together. But we can give you some examples of what that looks like.
Let me talk through that for just a second. So the way that I think about that almost goes back to that example that I used about the file. So when I was creating that policy, I would store that in my OneDrive, right? Now, a better way for me to share, rather than emailing a file attachment, a better way for me to share that out to my team is to use it as a file attachment, either in a group chat or a team, depending on how things are organized. But when it's all said and done, when we're complete and the policy is ready to be published to the organization, in theory, that's going to live on SharePoint as the publication place. So one of the great things about Teams is that there's no more of that ugly checking it out, your document is locked, and all of the things that people really despised about the SharePoint experience from that goes away in Teams.
One of the other questions, this one is a little bit broader, so hard to know specifically what the ask is, but do you need to set up an account to go in to get into the cloud? By having Office 365, essentially you are in the cloud in some capacity. So, not knowing more specifics there, I don't know if there's if anyone else wants to take a stab at that, if maybe they interpret it differently.
So, okay, let me see if I can help with this, and then if they have another question, they can build on it. One of the most important things that's happening here, folks, is that your username, your email address, that is your account, and that is the secure thread that carries through all of the tools, whether you're accessing it on your desktop, whether you're accessing it from a hotel or your in-laws house. The fact that you're using your credentials is what makes it secure. And so that's why you do need an account to get into all of the stuff, because that's what ties it all together.
I like that. There's almost an analogy in my mind of having a security badge and getting into a building, right? You're in the building.
Right. Well, and the other part is, Microsoft has done a lot of work to make sure that all this stuff is really secure. And I'm not a security expert on this, but when they told me that they've gone beyond the security settings that you would typically have at a bank, I feel like that is a bit more secure. That's a level of security that I have some confidence with.
Great. One more question, and then we'll just pick back up, and then I'll flag where we left off with a thumbs up, and then we'll come back to some. But after a document has been shared, reviewed, or edited, can you remove the share of the document? Can you rescind that share receipt, if that makes sense?
You can. So here's a few things. In general, once something has been shared, you need to go on the back end of it, which is, for example, the SharePoint or OneDrive. SharePoint is going to be what's the back end when you've shared a file in a team. OneDrive is going to be the back end of a file in the example that we just did in the chat, which means it's just shared between a couple of people. Does that help a little bit on that?
Yeah, I think so.
You've given me just about enough time to stall and get this whole thing re-up and reloaded. Apparently, it just used up a lot of bandwidth and decided to shut down in the middle. So we're almost there. You guys, let's talk for a second though. When you guys are doing a lot of work with clients, migrating them to Teams, are you finding that people were coming from a place of frustration with SharePoint and that's eased with Teams, or how are people transitioning mentally, right, from that SharePoint to Teams? Is that something that you guys have experienced?
There's still some folks that have a bad taste in their mouth from when they experienced it back in the day. We mentioned that briefly and say if you've had that experience, this is not the same beast it was before at all, and the adoption of 40 million users kind of speaks to that. So really Teams has become the hub of Office 365, tying everything together that we've been talking about already: phone, messaging, chat, file share, et cetera, et cetera. So just keeps building and getting better.
Yep, it sure does, and we appreciate that. Okay, we're about ready to launch it again. It's just booting up and it's coming up on my screen, so I can go back to my screen sharing. Anything else that's come in the meantime?
There have been, so if we're still stalling, that's okay. Deb had asked, how do you find the file without going back to chat? There's a couple of ways that you can kind of do that. So now that you're back up and running, it looks like, Jennifer, maybe you can show that and then we'll pause there and get back in, if that's okay with everybody. I love the questions coming through. There's a lot of them, so thank you so much. Hopefully it's valuable for everybody else too.
Yep, Eric, will you repeat the question though? I know it had to do with files.
That's okay. How do you find the file without going back to the chat? Aha.
So how would I do it? Let me share with you a quick how would I. So the experience I'm going to be able to demonstrate isn't maybe quite there yet, but two options. One is it may be in your file explorer. So your file explorer, when it is properly synced with OneDrive, it's going to land in here. But again, right now on this demo computer, where I would go is I'd actually go to my portal.office.com and log in and go to my OneDrive there, and I would be able to see my shared folders there. But guys, do you have another suggestion of where you might go on that?
I do, yeah, Jennifer. Another good option is the files list in your team. So on the left-hand menu, if you expand that, you'll have a files option there.
Duh.
All of your recent files. Obviously, you don't have any because you haven't. But if you're playing with all kinds of files, this is a great place to go to be like, oh shoot, I sent John that document yesterday. I need to go change something in there. You can just jump right into your recent files there.
Yep. And let me just get one up so we can get that loaded. And there we are. Take just a second to refresh. That's been landed here in my conversation with Alex now, and I can jump over here to my files and just
you might be a little bit ahead of the game.
You bet. And Eric, did you say you had another question?
There's a lot pouring in. So there is Q&A at the end, and I also will share with everybody that we're going to do office hours at SWICKtech. So as an extension of this, if people want 15 to 30 minutes with some of us at SWICKtech to kind of get a little bit more in the weeds on some of these things, we'll host those office hours and share a link at the end. So that'll come probably through email, I think. But we'll keep answering a few as I go here. Two that I wanted to grab. One was when you actually go to send an email from Teams, is that going to open up Outlook, or can you do that right from in Teams?
So it actually does open up Outlook. So as you see, and in fact, right now it's taking me to mail because of a backend setting on this sample tenant. but we would not have mail set up on your computers. You would have Outlook set up. It does take you right out to that other application and pre-fills in the email message with that sender or receiver's name.
Okay. Another question.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm just going to read this here. When you are sharing a document or presentation, why, when it opens up a different screen, do you have to go out and then come back in for your guest to see the new window?
I'm sticking on that one.
I'm not sure either, but that might be one for office hours that we can tackle and do some show and tell around and kind of see what you're trying to accomplish there.
Yep.
And then this is a good one that just came through. I installed Teams on my iPhone or phone and it pulled in my contacts wrong. Can I delete or edit my phone contacts? That's a dense question, I think.
Okay, well, we're going to start just for a quick thing on contacts here in Teams. They're not there yet.
Perfect. Yep. Thank you. And we were going to hit on that at some point.
Yeah, this was part of our conversation, and they're working on it. I promise. You know, this is one that they're hearing a lot of. They're fired up about. But right now, here's what I do know, and in my experiences with some, mega organizations throughout the country, there have been opportunities when there has been a conversion from Skype for Business to bring some of the stuff that you may have set up personally in Skype for Business. Sometimes those can transition over, and that is wonderful when that happens. But it doesn't happen universally, and it has to be a setting that your IT has decided that that's a good idea. So there may be reasons from a governance standpoint that they decide it's not a good idea, including whether there is that external component that we had mentioned earlier. So there are cases where you're starting, and I'm in my chat contacts right now just to show you, you may be starting from scratch. What you don't see built into your contacts is, think about email for a second. For every organization, you have your global address list, or is it called Active Directory now? I might be using old nomenclature for that. That's the one that your IT has set up that has all the people in your organization. Do you guys know what the right word for that is?
I think they're both still appropriate.
Okay, thank you. That was very validating. Again, I'm an end user trainer. We don't always get into the weeds with that tech stuff, but all of those people are already included. They're just not listed as separate contacts in here. They're already baked in. These separate contacts are like, ooh, I have my little group of people that I go to lunch with every Friday, and I can create a Friday lunch group for that. Or those things that could include externals that you might have been using on Skype for Business. So right now, we have had a consistently inconsistent experience with contacts and have really had to deal with that on a case-by-case basis. Other thoughts?
No, I think you got it.
Yeah, sorry. And I'm not happy about that answer. It's just what we know right now. Okay, so I did want to go back to one thing here. So I'm going to go back to Patricia, and we're going to do Patty. The stuff that I did on the earlier one, it fell off because we had to do the reboot, and I'm still using a sample tenant. But here's the thing. Now I have this beautiful conversation with Patty, and we want to add somebody to the conversation. Okay, so if I'm adding Nestor to the conversation, you can just hit add. But guess what, folks? This creates a new group. This creates a new group. So just keep in mind that you can, but now Nestor was not getting information that was privy to, just you and Patty. He's coming in cold on that. Now, if I come in here and I hit add people, guess what? Now that it's a group chat, you have some additional options. So I'm going to add Miriam to this group, and here are my options. Don't include the chat history, include the history from the past however many days, or include all of the chat history. And I love this because before we were adding Nestor to a conversation that was just between me and Patty, and they're like, oh no, you don't know that we want to let them see any of that private conversation. So that becomes a brand new group chat. But from here, any additional people that you add, you actually can indicate. And when you indicate it, I'm going to actually say include all chat history. Actually, hold on. There's a chat in there. Good. Let me do it.
Do not glaze over this when you do this. Like, it's important to call out for both sides of that coin.
Thank you. I appreciate that you're reinforcing that, because it really, so what's nice is here's also the message that gets posted. Megan, me, added Miriam to the chat and shared all chat history. So if we were planning Megan's birthday party or something like that, we want to be aware of what that looks like. Eric, have you seen other examples of, why you emphasize that this was also important?
One of the things, like if you're bringing on a new employee or something like that, you might want to give them some of that context, maybe as they're onboarding or like pre-employment, if they get access and their tenant is set up, like maybe you can say, hey, before you start on Monday over the weekend, you can start to kind of catch up with what the team has been working on. So there's a good reason to maybe include some of that history, and the birthday example is a good one if you're planning or something like that, or signing cards. Maybe you don't want that. But when you have 3 people together, this is a chat amongst the 3 of you. There are some limitations in a one-to-one chat where you're just tacking on a couple people. So something like this would be really good for, like, hey, where are we gonna have lunch today? And you're like a trio of friends that always gets lunch or something. Versus if you're actually working on a project or an objective or some sort of goal, then you're gonna actually want to have a channel or a team for that, right? And you can get more features out of that, like adding planner and tasks and things of that nature.
All right, which is beautiful. So again, just keep in mind the features that I was showing before in chat that corresponded just to my conversation with Patty would now correspond to this conversation with all 4 of us, including if I shared a file. So those are all. So as we dig into, should it be a group chat, a one-on-one chat, a group chat, or a team? Unless you are going to be working with that team on projects consistently and you need all the shared files and you need all, maybe a OneNote notebook and other things like that, there are many times that it should just be a group chat. And you can even rename. So now it's like, oh, when that pops up, that's my Friday lunch chat. Okay, now we know where we're going to pick where we're going to go. Keep in mind, you can always click on this add a tab guy here. And when I do this, again, I'm in a demo account with Microsoft. Your organization is going to have set whatever parameters it has for what you may have available to share within here. Okay, if this were just something, again, that I wanted to share just between this small group, I can add all sorts of stuff here. But if it's, again, ongoing stuff, we should be getting closer to spinning that up into a team. Is that consistent and fair, folks?
Yeah, and we do cover this in the 101 too, and we kind of paint the broad stroke over all of the different facets of teams. So if someone wants to flesh it out further, that's a great one to watch on demand. And again, with the office hours, we can definitely dig in deeper too.
So we're going to dig into a couple other things that we wanted to get to today. And again, please keep in mind that the whole reason we're going through this level of the demo is because this part is really the basis for what you find when you get into your teams and collaboration and more meetings. So when you come to the call portion, you may have the video option, you may have the audio option, and this guy is your screen sharing option. You literally could click on any one of these and that would initiate. That would initiate the call sequence. Okay, now again, given the limited environment that I'm able to be in, just wanted to spend a couple minutes with you on this sequence because the interface is the same whether you're doing a call with one person or a meeting or things like that. The participant list is really what changes, not the interface. This is not showing the similar interface for the live events. Again, what we're doing today, for our event is a live event, which has some different features behind it and things like that. We're not getting into that today, just as a heads up. So again, what you're going to see here is you have your video, you have your audio, you have your screen sharing, always have your more dots. So the more dots, if somebody is having audio or video problems, this is where you send them, is to your device settings, right? And I'm not sure if you guys have all seen this yet, but I have done, again, I'm doing a ton of these types of trainings. And oftentimes we're using Teams to deliver the trainings. And sometimes we have people who have ADA opportunities. They would like to see the information we're presenting on the screen. If you have not yet tried turning on the live captions, and I'm not sure if it's going to work in this environment because my microphone might not be synced in, the live caption option is a user setting. It is not the presenter setting that. It's each user who can turn on live closed captioning on the screen. Have you guys used that feature at all yet?
Just very lightly.
Yeah, I haven't.
Okay, so what's this leads to like some super cool stuff behind the scenes. Keep in mind that Microsoft has been kind of debuting this thing by really fine-tuning their dictate feature that you're going to find. Dictate is in Outlook, it's in PowerPoint, it's in Word, it's in Excel. So if you haven't used the dictate feature, go check that out. By really fine-tuning that, they've been able to turn on the live closed captioning. It actually can be done in multiple languages as well. So that can eliminate some language barrier issues. When that's turned on, it's just visual on the screen for the viewer. If I'm the viewer, I'm turning it on myself. But what happens behind the scene is that as the meeting is getting recorded in stream, it takes a little bit of extra time to process, and the actual closed captioning happens in stream behind the scenes. It is happening automatically, and it is searchable. That is now searchable text, which to me changes my meeting approach, where if someone has missed a meeting, I might just start to say, Ryan, this is your to-do. Eric, this is your to-do. And they are then going to be expected to go in and listen to the stream. And if they want to search for wherever I've said their name, that is an option for them to find that. So that can really turn into some great additional tools. Okay, your recording options are right here. As we mentioned before, by default, that's happening in stream. And we have our end meeting and turn off incoming video. You can do that over there. So chat is happening off to the side. I'm not popping that out in this example. I haven't gotten it. And there's still some things, I know even in the tenants, I haven't seen the 3x3. There's still a few things that haven't landed yet. But guys, if you have any suggestions on how to make that look better, please let me know. In the frustration, for those of you who haven't had this yet, the frustration is if I'm clicking on the participants and trying to manage any of their mute them or whatever, that I actually have to click back to get to chat. So that's why pop-out is so helpful. Okay, so those are the basics of the meeting. Again, this is who's going to show who's on the call. You can invite others, go right from here and actually message them. This is a message to ask them to join. And it pops me out. So, again, those are just some of the basics of getting into the meetings and the calls, but you can spin that all up right here from chat. Let me take a quick pause and see if we have any other questions.
We've had a couple come through. Shane's been doing good, and I've been doing good. We're just answering them.
Great.
By replying.
Wait, Shane?
Can you hear me?
No.
Okay, good. I have a few that I want to bring up just to talk through with you a little bit and offer a little bit more guidance. We did try and answer some of these questions in the chat, so hopefully that was helpful to folks, but I think some of these might be valuable to explain to people. So first one, someone asked, if you're creating a Teams meeting, I know we haven't dove too much into the meetings yet, but if you're creating a Teams meeting and you have several different lists of people or contact lists, like group A and a group B, can you add them all to a meeting? And my response to that was I would recommend using Microsoft Outlook to generate the team meeting. And so you can do that from your calendar menu. If you have both Outlook and Teams installed on your computer, you'll have a feature to start a Microsoft Teams meeting from your Outlook. And then it's just like creating any other meeting on your calendar. You can invite anyone you want. You can copy and paste those email addresses into the invitee list. You can even usually batch copy and paste them, so you'd be able to grab each of those groups and paste them in there.
I would agree. That is the best way to do that at this point. Now, keep in mind that we're going to get into, as we look at scheduling the meetings, we're going to get into where that meeting is held or hosted. And that's going to be an important thing to keep in mind if you are bringing people together from different groups. What else came up?
Yep, so another one, someone asked if they have a contact that was manually entered into their Microsoft Teams, so not one that's being populated by their organization, can we show them how to edit or delete those? And I think you actually, if you go to calls real quick, Jennifer, that might be the easiest way to display that.
You bet. So we're going to add a contact right here, and we're going to just make it an external. So keep in mind, one of the things that happens, and this might not allow for me to do an external. Let me see if I can do it. Okay, it does. It's always going to look for existing contacts first. It's going to look for valid Microsoft email addresses. There's a lot of things that it's looking for in the background.
Yep.
Okay, so once we have it, I'm going to go in and find it. Okay, and now these three dots is where you go to edit it. So I'm hoping that that is going to give them what they were looking for, right?
Yep. And then, yeah, I think the other thing to call out there is if you hit the three dots or the ellipses again, you'll have the remove contact option if you want to delete that person.
Exactly. The speed dial thing is really critical to have some people at the top of your list that you're contacting frequently, as we already know with speed dial elsewhere, but it's great to have here.
Yep, very good. So speed dial, I went into the three dots, so I looked for the contact. I went to the three dots. I did add to speed dial, and now when I come over here to the speed dial area, that's where you're going to have the add to speed dial, and you can make new groups right within here as well. Again, from right in here, you can jump in, can hover over the person, can jump to make a call. So that's now. There's a difference though between the voice and phone integration here. And I think we should take a quick moment and at least cover that your computer can make these calls for you using the web as its interface for that. But if it's integrating into your phone, that's a little bit of a different situation. And I know SWICKtech has been doing a ton on that. So why don't we have you guys chime in on that?
Yeah, and Jennifer, actually, I was going to point that out. That's a call or a question we just got a couple of minutes ago. Was can you call people from Teams if they don't have Teams, or that sort of stuff? So yeah, to that point, the general concept of Teams, from chat and Teams and the calendar, is all internal facing, right? So you can chat with other individuals internally. You can have Teams with staff that are part of the same organization. You can break outside of that bubble, but we don't recommend it. The calls piece is where you can engage external people. And so it's important to note you can have calls with someone who doesn't have a Teams environment. They can just join from a web app. And so with that method, you can use just someone's email. If you invite them to a Microsoft Teams meeting with just their email, they'll be able to click that link and open up a web app and log into the Teams meeting, so to speak. We go down the rabbit hole quick with a lot of this, so there's a few other options I want to point out. The next big one is an audio conferencing piece. So you do need additional licensing to be able to do audio conferencing, but what that gives you is the full conference bridge concept, where when you generate a Microsoft Teams meeting, you're going to get a phone number attached to that meeting and not just a join meeting link. So now if you send it to someone who's outside your organization and maybe they don't want to use a computer to log into the Teams meeting, they can call that audio number from their cell phone or their office desk phone and join the meeting just with audio. Now, obviously, you're not going to have video when you do that sort of thing, but it provides another opportunity for people to be able to join the meeting and makes it a little easier, get some of that friction out of there. As we know, everyone's used to the audio conferencing concept of having a conference room with, a Polycom in the middle of the room rather than a Microsoft Teams computer available. So that's an option. And then going even further, just to kind of elaborate on this a little bit more, there are ways you can use Microsoft Teams calling features to dial out external phone numbers and use it as your actual phone system. So we do that at SWICKtech. We're happy to explain that in a little bit more detail and dive into the licensing details if that's something you want to explore on a one-on-one basis. It does require a significant amount more of licensing per person. But then rather than just calling internally or setting up Teams meeting with email, you can just dial out to any number. For example, I could call Jennifer directly from my computer from my Microsoft Teams app on her cell phone.
Perfect. Perfect. Those are great examples. And I know we still had that one question we wanted to get into just in general about scheduling, and then I think we'll leave it open to a few more questions. Great. So here's the thing. The calendar application baked into Teams is your Outlook calendar. It's that simple. Like, but it doesn't quite look the same and it doesn't 100% behave the same. So let's just talk through, if I wanted to go and schedule the meeting here, and actually it was just as, let me go back a second, it went that fast. It's just as simple as literally clicking on the time slot where I want that meeting and it's spinning up an invitation. So we're going to make a test meeting. And I'm going to add a couple people. Picking your time, picking, all those things you guys know. You can add your recurring here. But this is where things get a little bit funky. The channel is one place in here that you can hold a meeting. You are not required to hold a meeting in a channel. If you do pick one of your team channels to hold your meeting, everyone from your team, whether they are invited to the meeting or not, will have access to that meeting to attend, and if it's recorded, they will have access to that. That can be both good and bad. You just have to understand. And again, we're not digging deep into that part today, but locations, if you're using an actual room, any of your rooms can be built into that as well, even if you're doing a Teams meeting that's going to be in that room. And we're going to talk about the agenda as well. So here is our invitation, and I want you to see what it's going to look like on your calendar as well as in Outlook. So where that lands in Outlook. Outlook in my calendar. Okay, here's our test meeting. Our test meeting landed right there. And I want you, the simplest thing, and I've been teaching this since I've been teaching Skype. When the time comes to attend your meeting, just click join. And even if there's a conference bridge set up, the join option is the fastest way for you to get in the meeting correctly and get everything that you need. However, didn't look like it spun it into a Teams meeting because I put a location in. Is that real? Because it should give me a Teams meeting. There's my join. My join button is right there. It didn't transfer over to Outlook in this example. Close it for just a second and we'll go back in. When I'm accessing it through here, this is the join button and you're going to see it. It will pop up when you get your email reminder pop up. It literally will say in that little pop up, join online. When you open up the invite, it will give you a join button. It will have a link in the invite saying join the Teams meeting. Don't overcomplicate it. Like, just keep this in mind. Just click join. Keep it that simple. And if you need to dial in, if you click join first, it will give you the option to join via a mobile device if you need to dial in, or join that via phone, and it will actually sync up your audio and your video for the sake of anybody who's trying to control those things in the meeting. So again, one of the messages we like to make sure we're really clear on, folks, is just click join. And here we are as we're doing that. Other thoughts just on that part? Go ahead.
Another thing I'll add is if you create a meeting from Outlook, you know, the ability to, for location, once you actually get into like a calendar invite. Oh yeah, yours right now still says new Skype.
It does
so
still say Skype, which is
Teams.
horrifying.
I know you're in like a demo. But when you do that, it fills in the location and then it puts all the information for Teams in the body of that email.
Yep, that's exactly what would happen.
Jennifer, while we're on the topic of Outlook invites, we actually have a pretty pertinent question, and maybe you have an idea behind this because I haven't really done it personally, but they're asking if they're creating a Teams meeting to send out the invitation. Is there a way to BCC people that they don't want other folks to see as an attendee? I believe if you click on the required or the optional buttons there is a third category called resources that is kind of like the BCC concept of sending an email. They won't be listed on the attendee list. So that would be how you would do that from my understanding, unless you have another recommendation, Jennifer.
Yeah, I would think that the only other suggestion that I have for that is that instead of doing it as an invite, that you set up the meeting as a meeting and just save it and maybe send it to yourself and a couple other key required people. You copy that information into the email message and then send that out to your, BCC list.
Yeah, that's probably a safer option.
Yeah, that's right now, that's current best practice. Now, keep in mind that whether it was a Teams meeting or a regular meeting, there was no way to do a BCC before. But now we're doing these meetings with hundreds and hundreds of people or even thousands, and you don't want to have all those email addresses out there for everybody to see. So that is why we would want to protect that, information and just create the invite, save it on your calendar, and then go grab. And when I grab it, typically, you guys know, like, it has the little lines and then it says join Teams meeting now. And the fact that it's not working just means, tech doesn't work perfect even for tech people. Grab the whole stuff. Grab from the end line to the beginning line, all the stuff in between. And if you use those lines as your indicator that you've grabbed it, you'll know that you've grabbed all of the right stuff, including the links. So that's kind of my precaution on that. So the last part of this, though, guys, was about your notes or your agendas and things like that. And let me give you a quick example. From right here, you're going to see I have an option of doing meeting notes. I'm going to click on that, because what that does is for the group, you'd want to populate your group first, but for the group that you have, it would create the OneNote for you. And have you guys done a recent training on OneNote to show everybody how awesome that tool is?
We haven't, but we use it extensively. So we haven't done a training around it.
I think it's probably time, folks. I think, like, in general, it's really time to explore the awesomeness of OneNote, because what I do with OneNote, let me see if I can get one spun up right now for you, is OneNote links right into Teams. And when you've shared it with a particular meeting group, then everybody has access to that. And actually, when you link it to a meeting, it can copy, well, and this is the advantage and disadvantage of some of that. It can copy in a roster of those who RSVP'd that they were attending. So again, there's some nuance to how we can leverage this tool. But in OneNote, I actually make a sample agenda, and then I expect all of my team to post their agenda items where they belong before the meeting is set up. That's where everybody goes and they know that the agenda lives there. And then aside my agenda is where I take my meeting notes with my action items in, and then we link those to Outlook, which links to To-Do, which can interface with other tools. And I'm speaking fast in a foreign language right now because I really think we could do some fun OneNote training. So that's the where. It's taking a minute to spin up here, so I didn't have OneNote prepped for this. So let's go in and see what other questions we have as we're getting close to our 90 minutes already.
Just as you had said that, someone had asked, can we do a webinar for OneNote? That's great. Someone had asked or mentioned they work in a clinic and everything needs to be secure due to HIPAA. Can you tell me if using Teams is secure? And I'm sure there's others. There's FINRA, there's HIPAA, there's NIST, and there's a lot of different compliances. I know Microsoft Azure Gov meets a lot of those criteria, and we, SWICKtech, are certified to help on that side of it. Shane, I don't know if you would have more context around Teams specifically.
No, just
we can get back to that one if we need to.
Yeah, no, I know that Microsoft does a lot of stuff on the security front, as Jennifer kind of alluded to up front. So it absolutely can be. I think there's going to be some processes and procedures, and maybe even some additional licensing that you're going to need to meet to make sure that you are HIPAA compliant. But it's certainly possible.
Agree. I wouldn't assume it. We'd make sure that it's being used in your organization properly, and that your IT has set that up. But it's going to be your IT governance in conjunction with all the Microsoft security licensing and things like that makes that perfect. But by design, those types of things were baked into the product.
Great. Why don't we bring the plane in for landing here? Are there any other final items? I know we're getting close to time, and we had an announcement and then some more Q&A if we need to get to that, if there were any final items. I think we covered everything that our agenda had outlined, all while navigating the questions along the way. So with that being said, let me go ahead and share my screen again. I have a presentation up here. 1 second. So, okay, you should be able to see that now. We do have a few more upcoming webinars, and we are planning out more even beyond this, but right now on the docket. Next week, we're partnering with the Better Business Bureau. So we're going to be one of their presenters. So it's their event. We're just kind of going to take the mic from them, and we're going to talk about what we did with our original Teams 101. Microsoft Teams does that. Question mark, exclamation point, because it's exciting and you didn't know that. And then following that, our cybersecurity secret sauce, SWICKtech's going to talk about RSP for complete protection. So it's a free webinar to break down our capability maturity model approach to cybersecurity and where businesses fall on that spectrum. We're also going to, in that webinar, showcase the life cycle of a cybersecurity attack and highlight some of the areas that most businesses are going to be vulnerable and how to protect very specifically against some of those vulnerabilities and how to increase your cybersecurity posture or improve on that. And that's it. That brings us to our official Q&A right at the very end. So if there are any final questions, you can sneak them through. And if we don't get to them, we can try to find a way to reach out. And again, we're going to share office hours via email with everybody as a follow-up to this. And we're also going to deploy a Net Promoter Score survey to everybody tomorrow. So we do ask for your feedback on that. We like to make sure we're improving on these things all the time and addressing any concerns.
Great, Eric. Hopefully some questions will roll in here quick, but I do see one that I don't think we answered, so I just want to touch on it real quick.
Thank you, Shane.
Someone asked, is there a way to move the red bar with the ellipses on it? It's often in the way. I think they're referring to in the meetings when you have that bar across the screen for turning on your video and your muting your mic, all that stuff. Not currently that I know of. I do believe I have seen that there is some sort of development or plan to either move that to the top or give you the option to move it around or to the top or something along those lines. So hopefully we'll see that soon. We did get a comment here mentioning that they'd like to see another extension to this webinar. So it sounds like we'll be planning a Microsoft Teams 301.
It's either the same person twice or two people. Yeah, so that's the second mention of that.
Well, so let's be real. Again, the whole point of this, and let me do like the final minute of screen sharing, because the idea behind this, folks, was that, let's see what I got here for my screen sharing. Where did it go? The idea was that all of the things that you've learned today can actually be translated back into all the Teams portions. So that, that's why we covered it the way that we did, is that the pieces of are that when you're in a team, you have posts, that's your chat. You have your file sharing, That's the same type of thing that's going to happen in a team. So this is the kickoff point. What comes next is all the different cool collaboration stuff that can happen in a team. And, you know, we could absolutely find another time to do that kind of webinar, but you guys have the foundation. Even though we didn't dig into teams specifically, you have the foundation of all the stuff to start playing in there and having a better idea of what, because you went through this.
Cool. We do get another question here. Deb is asking, with Microsoft, can you give, or I think with Teams, can you give badges? So something that I'm familiar with is praise that you can do in Teams. I think when she's saying badges, she's talking about like certs or that sort of stuff, but you can do praise to call out a teammate on a channel or something like that to announce, you know, thanks for helping me out, or you're a great team player.
You do that by typing in @praise, or is it /praise? I forget.
I think either will work, yeah.
Okay, and yeah, a really fun tidbit, if you go to your search bar in Teams, for example, it'll even tell you if you type in the / same key as a question mark or an @ it's going to give you a whole list of things that you can do with like kind of a shortcut. So really cool thing. If you haven't done that, go check that out, and you might save yourself even more time and become more efficient in there.
Yep.
Last question, do you hold advanced Excel webinars? I don't think we have. Jennifer, given the name of your business, Excel and Flourish, I'm going to point that for you.
Yeah, that's absolutely something we can help with. Advanced can mean different things to a lot of different people, so please feel free to reach out to me directly. You guys will be hearing from me shortly about some additional training and things that we can offer to help your organization with adoption of Microsoft Teams in conjunction with what SWICKtech is doing, as well as other trainings that we offer. So happy to have that conversation with you.
Well, thanks so much, everybody, for attending today. If you have any other questions, be on lookout for an email from us, but have a great evening and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.